Okay, it's 7 o'clock. Good evening, everyone. I'm Gemma Miner. I am the academic coordinator for volunteer engagement at the State 4-H office, and I'm also the co-chair of the Incentives and Recognition Advisory Committee. And that's the hat I'm wearing tonight. I'm presenting on behalf of the committee. It looks like it's a small group tonight, which is fine. So this is a presentation. There is time throughout the presentation for Q&A. And so just if you have questions as I'm talking, things come to mind, be sure and put them in the chat, and then we'll get to them at each one of those places and breaks in the presentation for Q&A. Okay, let's get started. So our agenda tonight is that we are going to talk about the achievement progression. We spent a lot of time last year talking about Spark achievement, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on that tonight, that one topic, but I will mention it as it feeds into the Emerald Star 1 program and Emerald Star 2 and how it affects impact stars as well. We'll go through some sample forms for Emerald Star 1 and 2. We'll spend most of our time on those forms because that's the place where most of our members are at right now. And then I will spend a little bit of time. It'll be a quick review of the impact stars because most of our members aren't quite there yet. And then I'll talk a little bit about the mechanics of the soft launch. What does that mean? And then I'll go through some award scenarios. Those will be kind of embedded throughout our conversation. Some of them show up when we talk about the manual, when I show you that, and some will show up at the end when I point out some very specific things that I want to make sure that everyone's aware of. Okay. So let's get started with the progression. So as we all know, the progression actually starts with Spark achievements for junior and new members. And the full adoption of Spark achievements actually happened on July 1st, 2023. So for all junior members and all new members, regardless of their age, that's where they start in the achievement programs if they want to work on achievements. Once again, achievements are not required, but if they want to work on achievements, that's the place where we start if we're a junior or a new member, regardless of our age. Emerald Stars and Impact Stars are in soft launch this year. So what that means is that we're introducing it. We're making sure that people are comfortable going into Emerald Stars. We do have members who were juniors last year who became intermediate members this year and who are ready to start their Emerald Stars. So for them, it's a hard launch, but for most of it, it's kind of a soft launch, just starting to understand and recognize what the path and the progression is. And then Impact Stars comes after Emerald Stars. I think we've spent, if you attended a Spark Achievement, you know this information, but if you haven't, this is your first time in a webinar with me. I'm glad you're here. So Spark Achievements focus on the breadth of 4-H opportunities to identify a spark. And a spark is something that brings you passion and joy. It's the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning. It's your motivation, your internal motivation. And it potentially should have the potential to make a positive difference in the world. So in order to be a spark, it has to beat those two things. Something that brings you passion and joy and has the potential to make a positive difference in the community or the world. It's designed for younger members or newly enrolled members, regardless of their age. There are 4 levels, and members can achieve multiple levels in 1 year. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we get to the manual. Emerald Star focuses on spark exploration. So in the Spark Achievement, they identify their spark. By the time they complete level 4, they've identified at least one spark. Then they use that spark or another one to focus on exploring more about their own personal development around that spark. And then in Emerald Star 2, they do some research and identify others in the community that are solving problems that are connected to their spark. And then they contribute some service, just 4 hours of service with an identified organization. And then for Impact Stars, that's focused on making an impact, just as it implies. So at the end of Emerald Star 2, they identify impact goal, something that they can do to make a difference in their community that's connected to their spark. And then when they get to Impact Stars, then they start working on making an impact by doing a service learning activity. There are 4 levels, and the levels must increase in depth or breadth in their self-determined projects. And those projects are either done individually, in pairs, or in groups. And we actually recommend that they're done in groups. All of it's anchored in the 4-H thriving model. We've been working on thriving in California since 2010, but you will start to see more information and kind of a energizing a resurgence of a conversation around thriving in 4-H. And so you'll start to hear more about that, but the progression was built on this model and understanding that the 4-H thriving model of positive youth development guides everything that we do in 4-H. The program is based on youth agency and collectivism. Basically what we mean by that, especially in the Emerald and Impact Stars, the progression and the design of their programs is completely up to the group or the individual. There is multimedia reporting, which means that they can report in multiple ways with some written reporting that's required, but most of it can be done in a way that's up to the member. And I'll talk more about that when I show you the forms. And then all the efforts are encouraged to be done collaboratively, so as a part of a team, but it's not required. And everyone does individual recording, learning, and reporting. Some things might be duplicated because they're working on a project together. So it might be the same. They fill out the form the exact same way, but they actually all have to fill out their own form. And then, of course, when they record what they learned, that should be independent of the rest of their team. All right, let's dig into Emerald Stars. So as we talked about, the Spark Achievements is for junior and new members. Emerald Stars is for intermediate members. So they must be a 4-H intermediate member, 11 years old by December 31st of the program year before they can start Emerald Stars. So if you have members, and I'll tell you all the conditions that apply to when they can start Emerald Stars, but the first benchmark is they need to be an intermediate member. And remember, I already said it's about discovering their purpose. And if they want to do record books, they still compete at the club and county level if they want to do record book competition. So there's a record book program. It's separate than the achievement program. Even if they do a record book, if they don't want to do evaluation at the club or county level, they don't have to. But if they'd like to, and that's available to them, then those are the levels where they can compete. Emerald Star 1 looks like this. So we talked about they have to identify a spark. They have to know one of their sparks. So they either can pick the one that they identified in the Spark Achievement Program, or they can change it, because we know that youth change their sparks fairly frequently, and it's fine if they didn't write it down in their Spark Achievements, or if they're starting Emerald Star from the place of having completed a bronze star rank and didn't complete Spark Achievements, which is an acceptable way to enter Emerald Star 1. They just need to know what one of their sparks is and has to meet that definition of being something that brings me joy and something that could be used to make a positive difference in the world. Then they define a personal development goal that's connected to that spark. And then they define some strategies. What are the strategies I'm going to do, actually tasks I'm going to do to reach that goal? And then they achieve their goal and they earn their Emerald Star 1. So it's pretty simple. We're setting them up for a progression of learning. So it sounds like it's really simple, but once you go through the forms, it's like, oh, they have to showcase and report. There's other things involved in the process of earning their Emerald Star 1, which I'll show you in a little bit. For Emerald Star 2. So Emerald Star 2, once again, Spark. It can be the same one they did for Emerald Star 1. It can be a new one. Sometimes what members learn in Emerald Star 1 is their spark is actually something totally different than what they thought. And so when they work on Emerald Star 2, they can do something different. They set and achieve their personal development goal. So they do the same thing. They're setting a new goal. They're working on achieving that personal development goal. And then simultaneously, they're doing some research in their community about community organizations. It could be corporations. It could be LLCs. It could be schools. But that groups of people who are making a difference or addressing an issue or a societal cause that's somehow connected to their spark. It doesn't have to be a direct path. It has to be generally connected, and they can make a connection. As long as a member can make a connection to what that community organization is doing, then it could be connected to their spark. So they do some research in the community. And when I show you the forms, I'll talk about what does that research look like. And then they identify at least one and not more than two community partners that they're going to contribute some volunteer hours for. And they contribute up to 4 hours with those community partner or partners. And then by the end of Emerald Star 2, they define their impact goal. So basically they say, based on everything I've learned from Impact Star or my Emerald Star 1 and 2, this is where I think I can design a project that will meet needs in my community that I've discovered through my research and working with my community partner. Then they earn their Emerald Star 2. They're only going to define their impact goal. They're not going to do anything with it at that point. Somehow this did not get the right picture. So this should be Impact Stars. Hang on, I'll come back to Impact Star in a bit then. So let's go on. Let's just stop here for questions. Does anyone have any questions right now? I don't. Let me see. I don't see the chat. Oh, there's the chat. Nothing in the chat. Okay, I'll keep going. All right, so Impact Stars. So Impact Stars are designed for senior members. They must have completed Emerald Star 1 and 2 before they start Impact Stars. But Impact Stars is about making an impact. Their record book competition, if they decide to do record book, once again, record book's a different program than the achievement program. They have a relationship, but they're different programs. But as a senior member, they can compete at the state level. So that's the extra level if they want to go to competition. And then their minimal levels of involvement by the time they're a senior is all the way up to the national level. Impact Stars, the graphic looks like this. So they start with a spark, and now we're starting to build. We're starting to be more challenging and more complex as we mature in age and in our experience with 4-H. And so they develop a personal development goal with strategies, just like they did with Emerald Star 1. And now we're setting an impact goal with strategies. And both of those things come together to create their service learning project. So then they implement their project, whatever they define. As we said, we're recommending as a group, but it can be done as individually. And then they earn their star. So let's say if they've done it for the first time, they're earning their bronze star. So they complete their service learning project, they earn their bronze star. All right, so now say they're going to go on to their silver star. So there's some special considerations. So when they advance from one star to the next, they must show growth in one of two ways. They can either show growth by doing the same project. If they really love their project, made a great impact, they had really good results, and they're really passionate about what they're doing, one way they can show growth by doing the exact same thing is by just reaching more people. So they can, let's say they start in their neighborhood or a small community, then they expand it to maybe the neighboring community and their own community, they duplicate it. And then maybe by the time they get to Gold Star, they're doing the whole county. And then maybe by the time they get to Platinum Star, they're doing multi-county. So that's how we expand. If we're going to keep doing the same thing, we have to show growth that way. The other way we can show growth is by totally changing our spark, changing our service learning project. So we're actually gone a different way. We're learning something new. That's showing growth because we're learning something new. So they can do it multiple ways. They can change it up every single time, or they can keep doing the same thing. Or let's say they do one thing as a bronze star and then they change it up for silver. But then for silver and gold and platinum, they keep saying, oh, I like this project. I'm just going to keep expanding from silver to gold to platinum, and that's perfectly fine. Stephanie, go ahead and just write your question in the chat. Okay. That's the best way to do that. And then service projects and other programs can count. So if they're doing service learning projects as a county ambassador, and if they're involved in the Citizenship Washington Focus, in any civic engagement projects, or the Civic Engagement Academy, there are all kinds of ways where our young people actually complete service learning projects in our program. So make sure that they understand that they can actually get Impact Star credit if they actually are completing those forms and doing the process of the Impact Stars at the same time as they're doing their other service learning. Basically, it's some people would say that's double dipping, but it's not, because we think that we're just rewarding. We're teaching our young people that it's smart to draft, like to get credit for multiple strategies or for the same strategy in multiple ways. Okay, and then I wanted to make sure we pointed out that there's a national program called the National Youth in Action Awards. If you're not aware of that program, it's an annual program from National 4-H, and it's by application. But one of the reasons we set this program up the way we did was so that it sets up our California members to be able to easily apply for a Youth in Action Award, because they must go into that application process having done something that makes an impact in their communities. So by teaching them this process and going through actually making a difference, it sets them up nicely to be able to be competitive with the Youth in Action Awards, which is kind of a big deal. Okay. Oh, Stephanie, no matter the age, after 8, youth have to start with Sparks, then move on to the Emerald Stars. Is that correct? No. So junior members, let me go back to the chart because that really helps us understand the most. There we go. So primary members, let's just start from the very beginning. If we go down the primary member column, primary members have an achievement program. It's called an iSprout project. So if primary members want to do achievements, they have to follow the iSprout project. So that is where our primaries 5 to 8-year-olds can earn achievements. Junior members start with Spark. So if they're 9 or 10, 4-H age, 9 or 10, they do Spark achievements. And that is the only achievement that's available to junior members right now. Okay. And then they finish their Sparks. And then if they become an intermediate member, then they do Emerald Stars. But your question is, then they move on to youth have to start with Sparks. So it depends. It's like yes and no. It depends on their age and their 4-H, how they enter the program. So when I get to the manual, I'm going to go through every single age and how they enter this program and what are the if-thens. This is those special scenarios about if your member is this, then this, right? Right now we're in this transition period from the old star rank system to the new achievement system. So where they are in star ranks or not, and then achievements or not, will determine how best to continue on this path. And I'll get to that in a minute. Okay. Do I understand correctly that record books are actually separate from achievements? Yes. Record book is a record book program and achievements is an achievement program. They're two different things. They have a relationship, but they are not the same thing. Will you cover tonight what parts of the record book remain and what, if any, are eliminated? I have many parents asking me about this. I will show you where you can find that information. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on record books tonight, but we have talked about doing another webinar or maybe even a Q&A because the materials are available. So I think what we'll do is we'll say, go read things. We'll do some Q&A live webinars where you can come and ask your questions, or maybe even drop in office hours where you don't have to stay the whole time, but you get your questions answered and you move on. You can also ask your question in the record book support Facebook group. That's another way that we're giving support and answering questions. I'm on there every night. So if you join the Facebook, the California record book support group, that's for record book questions. And then there's the California Achievement Program Facebook group. That's for the new achievement program. So questions are being asked for both of those things in 2 different places. But I highly recommend that you join both groups, and I'll show you how to join those, okay, as we go toward the end of the evening. One of them I sent in the email that I sent you with the link for tonight. Okay. We got to those. So now I'm going to get into manuals and forms, because that will help clarify a couple of your questions there. All righty. So this is the manual. So the manual now is a combined manual. Remember last year we separated out just Sparks because we were only dealing with Sparks. Now we've combined them all. So the whole achievement program is in one manual from Sparks all the way through Impact Stars. You can find all the information in one place. Not record book program, just achievements. Record book has its own manual. I'll show you that too. The overview chart is once again printed there. I'm not going to go over the chart, but I am going to spend some time on this progression because it answers, really gets at, I think, Stephanie's question there. Okay. So if you're a junior member this year, right now, 9-year-olds, if they want to do achievements, start with Sparks. If you're 10-year-old and you're a junior member, start with Sparks. Even if you were a 9-year-old last year and you were in 4-H, this is not necessarily a new member. Let's say you're a 10-year-old second-year member. Let's not count your primary years. Let's just say as a junior. So you start with Spark Achievements. Even if you didn't start last year and you're 10 this year, you start with Spark Achievements. If you were a member when you were 9, they can count their previous year's work toward their Spark Achievements as long as they didn't use their activities to earn a star rank. We may have situations where we had a 9-year-old earn a bronze star. That would be rare, but it does occasionally happen. So if you have a member who earned a bronze star as a 9-year-old last year, they still keep their bronze star, but they cannot continue on the star rank path. They need to go back if they want to do achievements and start their Spark Achievements. If they used last year's activities to earn that bronze star, they can't count last year's activities to earn their star ranks or their Sparks. Sorry. They have to start with this year's activities and start completing their Spark Achievements, and they can go into their 11-year-old working on their Spark Achievements. There's no rush to finish because as an intermediate, if you think about the Emerald Star 1 and 2, they're an intermediate member for 3 years. So that means that they have 3 years to complete 2 levels. So if they're still working on Spark Achievements in their first year as an intermediate, it's perfectly fine. There's no reason to rush through because they have to be an intermediate before they can start Emerald Stars, and they have to be a senior member before they can start Impact Stars. So there's no reason to rush. Okay. If you're an intermediate right now, you're 11 years old. If they did not do star ranks before, they never did star ranks, they weren't interested in star ranks, then we want them to start Spark Achievements if they want to do achievements. Not required. If they now suddenly go, oh, wait, I think I can do this Spark Achievement. I am interested in achievements now as an 11-year-old. So they start with Spark Achievements. They can count all their previous year's work down to 9 years old for those Spark Achievements as long as they didn't use any of those activities to earn a star rank. Same rule applies. If they earned a star rank with the activities, they can't use them for their Spark Achievements. But if they didn't, then they can count them. And this first bullet is if star ranks were not previously earned, right? If they weren't previously earned, they did a bunch of things, they can actually go through the Spark Achievement report and fill out all the things that they did. And hopefully they have some documentation. Maybe they actually completed a PDR, the personal development report form, but they didn't earn any star ranks. They were just filling it out because that's what people do. Or it's on their calendar that they attended an event, or people know that they, served as did some kind of leadership activity with their club, just as long as they can document it somehow. Okay. If they're an intermediate, they earn star ranks, they keep those if they previously earned them. If they're an intermediate and they already earned at least a bronze and they want to complete Spark Achievements, they can. They can go back and start over because they can't double dip. They can't use activities they use to earn their star rank. But if they want to earn their Spark Achievements, they can certainly do that as an intermediate or a senior. If they want to go back, they can. It's not required. Because if they've earned a previous star rank, that means they have at least a bronze. And if they have at least a bronze, then they start now with Emerald Star 1. So if you have a bronze star or completed your Spark Achievements last year as a 10-year-old, then you start with Emerald Star 1 now as an intermediate member. And then you work your way through Emerald Star 1 and then through Emerald Star 2 as an intermediate. Okay? If you already completed the Emerald Star program project in the previous system, some counties have what they call an Emerald Star project. And oftentimes that project is either a leadership project or a service learning project of some type. And every county does it different. If they earn that Emerald Star, it's apples and oranges. So if you're an intermediate member, you already have your old Emerald Star, your legacy Emerald Star is what we're calling it. And they have a Bronze Star. They actually start with Emerald Star 1 in this new system and work on Emerald Star 2 after that. So it's totally different. They start over Emerald Star 1 and 2, and we will give them a special recognition item that says that they actually did Emerald Star twice, Emerald Star 1 2 times. All right. After Spark achievements, of course, got Emerald Star 1. After Emerald Star 1, work on Emerald Star 2. If they're a senior member, if they join 4-H or begin to work on achievements as a senior member, when they're a senior, we want them to complete at least one level of Spark achievement with the goal to identify at least one Spark. And that's if they're new to 4-H or they just now begin working on achievements. They never did star ranks and now all of a sudden they're interested in them, which is perfectly fine. We want them to do at least one Spark level. They don't have to do all 4 unless they want to, just like intermediates. If they want to do the whole Spark achievement system and earn all 4 levels, they can. Okay. So then after they've done their one level of Spark achievement, they complete Emerald Star 1 and 2. Both levels can be done in the same year. If you're a senior member, you can really just work your way through Emerald Star 1 and 2 in 1 year. And if you complete an Emerald Star project in the previous system, the same thing applies. You still complete Emerald Star 1 and 2, totally different programs. So it might be a little confusing because they're the same name right now. But once we get through this year, it'll all work itself out. And then a senior member, after you complete Emerald Star 2, you immediately can begin working on your impact stars. If they do have any ranks, of course, anything they previously earned, they will keep. So the recognition items for those who previously earned star ranks or the legacy Emerald Star. So for any member who completes an impact star in the same level as a previously earned star rank or the historic Emerald Star, they'll receive a pin instead of because they already have the patch. New people working on new achievements will still get the patch, that we're going to keep the patches as the award. But if members already have that and they're starting this new system, they're going to get a pin instead. And we'll show you where the pins get placed. Basically, they're going to go through the center of their patch. And so they'll be layered onto the patch and be lined up that way. We will be designing a brand new hat to show placement of all the things for our members. As soon as we're waiting on we're waiting on those pins to come in. And as soon as that happens, then we'll be able to take good photos of where the placement for their hats. Okay. That's all I really wanted to point out in the manual because I sent you the links to that. And before I go any further, let's just go to the resource page because this answers a couple of questions. So in the email I sent you, there's a link to this new resource, the California 4-H Resource Center is what it's called. You know, I don't know if you know this, but during this summer, we had multiple issues with our website being inaccessible. And so we quickly pivoted and created this new resource center that has basic information that families and volunteers need in order to really do their work. And so everything you need that's the basic information is on this page. So with achievements, you just go to the home page, which I sent you. You just go to the achievement button and you'll see, let's just click on Emerald Stars. Actually, any one of those buttons takes you to this same page. So iSprout is there with the curriculum and their report form using the iSprout report. Spark Achievements is there. The achievement manual, like I showed you, is one manual for everything. So every one of these achievement manual buttons, whether it's under Sparks or Emerald Star or Impact Star, is the same manual. Nothing's different. But then the Spark forms are here with examples. And there is a video of the Spark Achievement introduction. So it's this same webinar where we focus on Spark. So if you were not able to attend one of those live webinars last year, A recording of one of those is here, and it's really helpful if you watch or ask parents to watch that video so they can help their members fill out the forms. But the forms are pretty self-explanatory if you haven't had a chance to look through them, but the video helps. Anyway, so then you go down to Emerald Star 1 and 2 and Impact Stars, and again, the achievement manual, the report forms, and an example, which I'm going to show you. Impact Stars, report form, example form. And then if you're still working on Star Rank system, then those is just a brief overview and where those forms are found. So that's on the achievement page. Then if you go back and go to record books, because that was Christine's question, then you go to the record book link right here in the upper right-hand corner, and you'll see two things. Record books with the achievement program is the left column, and record book with Star Rank is the right column. So there's two different manuals depending on what path you're on. So for new achievements, there's a special annual project report form for new achievements. So these are the report forms that you need for members working on the new achievements. There's the new achievement manual here. They need a different annual project report, an APR. And then there's a leadership report that's connected to that APR. There's a new document called Annual Summary of 4-H Activities. And then for senior members, the 4-H resume template. And then for primary members who are doing a personal development report, this is the basic one. The one that's on the achievement page is connected to the iSprout program. It's a little bit different than the basic primary PDR. And then the Star Rank record book is basically, it's the same forms that you're used to seeing, but they're all there updated for this year. We will be adding a Google Sheets version. I know some members do use a Google Sheets. We're currently fussing with that a little bit. And then as soon as we get that done, that link will be up there as well. And that'll be soon, in the next week or so. All right, let's go through some forms. Not that one. Let's start with Emerald Star. Okay. So this is an example of an Emerald Star project. The form should look familiar. We tried to keep look and feel, something that we're familiar with, that's comfortable. They fill out their basic information, their age, their birthday, who they are. If they're working in a team, who they're working with. So they have to identify a spark. Remember, they can pull this from their Spark achievement, or it can be something new. So that's where we start. We start with a Spark achievement, then we set a goal. In this example, this member said their personal development goal is to learn how to do academic research so they can learn more about pollution and how it could be harmful. It doesn't have to be about research. Their goal can be about anything connected to their Spark. We gave some other examples: improve their public speaking skills, get involved in a local environmental advocacy group. But this list is, certainly not exhaustive on all the types of goals that members could have. And I think that's where the Facebook group comes in handy, because people ask questions. Hey, is this an okay goal to work on Emerald Star 1? And then people will chime in and say, and give support to them, helping them identify their goals. And then they create their strategies in order to reach that goal. And then they answer that. Basically, all the forms are very prompt based. So if they answer the prompts, chances are they're going to be just fine going through the process of earning their Emerald Star 1 and 2, and even their Impact Stars. Because if we just focus on answering the prompts each step of the way, then it guides them to that completion point. So what are your strategies? Why are those strategies important? Is the other column. And then in good GPS fashion, goal management fashion, we ask them, what are some things that might get in your way? What are the roadblocks or challenges that might get in your way? And then what will you do if that happens? And this should be familiar if you've done the old program, because the LDR, the Leadership Development Report, is based on this strategy throughout. And we know through the research of positive youth development that when young people can identify a roadblock and then identify what gets in their way, even if something else gets in their way, like it's not the thing they identified, but something else comes up and creates a roadblock to reaching their goal. Young people are much more resilient and able to bounce back and go, oh, I know how to navigate around this, or I know all I need to do is think of different strategies so that I can work around this new challenge. So they're much more resilient and able to bounce back, and typically don't get stuck not being able to reach their goal because of a roadblock. Okay, then they record their progress on achieving their personal development goal. So they want to, what were their steps and strategies? What did they do? When did they do it? What did they learn? So they have to record at least 6 tasks in order to finish this component. And then their adult mentor signs off. And a mentor is typically at Emerald Star level is probably going to be a project leader or a club leader or other 4-H adult who may be working with the members on their achievements. And that can happen in many ways. Some clubs have an achievement program project, and members enter achievement programs. I think that we have some clubs already that have just have a Spark Achievement Project and an Emerald Star Achievement Project and an Impact Star Achievement Project, and those typically are bigger clubs, of course. But depending on the size of your club, you may, form a project that members can enter that want to work on their achievements, and that would be the adult mentor signature. The mentor has to be a 4-H adult volunteer. All right, so then after they've done all of their activities to reach their goal, they do some reflection on their goal. Once again, we're just answering prompts. You'll see there are no word counts here. It's just basic answer the prompt. What did you do? And go through this form. It's just prompt and response. And then they're going to do either a written summary or an illustrated reflection of their Emerald Star 1. It's up to them. They can either do a story, which is fine, or they can in words, and they can just put it right in this box if it's just words. If it's a photo, let's say it's a scrapbook or a photo story or a graphic or video or audio, then those must have a caption. Photos and graphics must have a caption that says it right there. And then describe what you learned and actions you took. That's what their story should be about, no matter which medium they use. If they have a slide deck or photos or graphics, a video, then all they need to do in this box is insert the URL so that it's saved on their own Google Drive or their own device or their own whatever storage place. That's a digital storage, and then they just put the URL in the box so that if they go to competition, the evaluators can just click on the link and they would go watch the video or see the graphic or whatever that is. And then finally, or the club leader, unit leader signing off might want to see it, of course. And so signatures again, and that's the end of Emerald Star 1. Okay. Emerald Star 2. So we're building off of Emerald Star 1. All of this is a progression. They build on each other. So you can see we ask again on this one, what's your spark? Protecting the environment. Was this the same as your previous spark? Yes, it is. It doesn't have to be. That's why we're asking, because it can change, and we want to know that. Did it change? And then your personal development goal. So this member got clearer about a personal development goal. They wanted to learn something else. And they really honed in on researching wax pollution. So remember before it was about doing academic research. That was kind of their goal. But now they want to research wax pollution. So they're narrowing down their focus, not just in general, but now we're doing wax pollution. So is this your previous goal? No, I've actually gotten more specific here. And if we look back on Emerald Star 1, we can see that they got more niched. All right, so now we're going to talk about their impact goal research. So they're going to start to create their research plan. And their research plan, which is really their goal, is about research in this one. They answer the prompts. How can your personal development goal help you in your community issues research? So they answer that question. And then we're starting to get some word counts here. In Emerald Star 2, and the word counts are small, 75 to 100 words. That's 2 or 3 sentences. Not a lot of words. Yeah, but we are saying, and we're saying approximate. No one's going to score word counts. No one's even going to count word counts. But in general, we're pushing them a little bit to, 2 or 3 sentences, talk a little bit more than you did in Emerald Star 1. You're a little older now. And then what are some strategies that you're going to use to conduct that research? So say what those are. And then they're going to keep a research log. And once again, it has to have at least 6 research activities. And you can see in this example, we said that they created their own survey. They don't have to, but we wanted to demonstrate that it's not just internet research, right? It could be mostly internet research, what so we think most members will do, but it could be things like interviews. You can interview a classroom teacher, you can interview all kinds of people that are connected to your Spark. So you just record the research that you did and where you did it, and then tell us what you learned. Then you're going to summarize and analyze your findings so that during that research, they collected data, right? So they filled in all this column on the right. That's all their data. What did I learn? So now, how do I summarize? So they're going to summarize by answering the prompts. They don't have to guess at what a summary means. It's like, what does it mean to summarize my data? If they answer the questions, they'll be summarizing. So what did you find out? Summarize what you learned in approximately 75 to 100 words. Imagine that you're teaching your 4-H club about the issues you discovered. What are the most important and interesting things that you learned? So then they summarize those based on their research, their research chart, their log. And then they analyze their findings. So then we ask them questions once again. Answer the prompt and you'll be fine. Describe what people and organizations are currently working in your community to fix issues related to your Spark. What are they doing to address those issues? What do you think still needs to be done? So this is where we start leading them toward thinking about what could be an impact goal. What still needs to be done and what might I be able to do? So then the next part, though, part B, is based on their research from part A, they list 1 or 2 community service organizations. And then, like I said, it can be a corporation, it can be an LLC, it can be a school district. It doesn't have to be a community-based organization. It can be any organized group of people who are working on an issue connected to their Spark. They need to make sure that they meet the organization's requirements for volunteers, and oftentimes that's age bound. And so this happens a lot with SPCA. So places where there are animals have a minimum age, typically of like 16. So if that is somewhere where the member wants to volunteer, what they need to do is just work with the organization to say, I'm only 14. Actually, that's a bad example because they're intermediates. Let's say they're 13. I'm 13, so I can't show up on site, but is there something I can do to contribute as a volunteer that doesn't require that I'm physically present at the SPCA? And typically they can work with the organization to find a way to contribute and volunteer in other ways. Okay, so they list their 1 or 2 partners that they're going to volunteer with. Then they keep a volunteer log, and they log what they did and how many hours they contributed. And it has to be at a minimum of 4 hours total. So if they have 2 organizations or 2 groups they're working with, it still has to total a minimum of 4 hours, but not 4 each, just 4 total. But they just are contributing to one organization, still a minimum of 4 hours. And they log their contributions to the organization. Then after their community service is done, they do some reflection, once again, answering the prompts, pretty simple little prompts. And now we identify our impact goals. So by going through learning based on their research from part A and B, they set a specific goal that uses their Spark to make a difference in their community. And really, it's about what will you do with a team or on your own to make a difference and meet a community need. And then they describe what that need is. And then we ask more prompts about how did your research and volunteer work lead you to this goal? How does it relate to your Spark and your personal development goal? So we're leading them down that way. And then now we're going to showcase our work. So in Emerald Star 2, they are required to do a written component and a visual component now. So we've got both, not just a choice, but we're doing both. And it can be simple. Like you can see this, the example here says, my written component will be an essay about crayon pollution. So an essay can be 1 page. We're not looking for a novel or anything. It's very simple. And then the visual component, this says, my visual component is a diagram of the life cycle of a crayon. So it's 1 diagram, so that implies that it's 1 sheet of paper. And then here's the link to my visual component. Here's the link to my written component. And that form is done. And then they're going to present what they did. They're going to present their showcase. This is a showcase, their written work and their visual work. They're going to present that to an audience that's at least the county level or above. And they can do this at county presentation day. They can do it at a leaders meeting. They can do it at some event the county is hosting, and they can have a table, a booth at some event. They can do this in many different ways. And then they just share how their experience showcasing went. 3 ways it went well and 3 ways it could have been improved. Just talk a little bit about that, and then signatures, and then we're done with them. We'll start 2. Okay, any questions about Emerald Star 1 and 2 so far? How are we doing time-wise? We're doing good. Okay, let's go on to impact stars. Like I said, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on impact stars. I'm going to go through this briefly. It's set up pretty much the same way as Emerald Star 1 and 2, but it's more complex because now we're doing our impact activity. We're actually doing our service learning project. So this preliminary box is if you're working on your silver, gold, or platinum star. So you only do this first box if you already have your bronze star in this system, not the old bronze star, the new achievement bronze star, because we're asking you to tell us, is this the same personal development goal and the same impact goal you used to earn your previous star, or is it something different? So we want to know, this is where we start to identify, how is this member showing growth from their bronze to their silver, and then silver to gold and gold to platinum. It sets us up to understand, are they doing the same activity or are they doing something else? All right, so then they once again, identify their spark. They set their personal development goal. If you remember that image, is a personal development goal path and an impact goal path. So they set their goals. They set their strategies for each one of those activities. And then that leads them to their service learning activities. So we guide them to say, your service learning activity needs to connect your personal development goal with your impact goal. It must make a difference in your community and affect the community outside of 4-H. So we're not doing something inside of 4-H, we're doing something inside the greater community, and it involves your community partner in some way. And that doesn't mean that they have to continue to, they can pick a new community partner, but they can use the same one they did with their Emerald Star. But it could just be a resource. It doesn't mean that they have to create this service learning project alongside of their partner. It can be just using their community partner as a resource, a sounding board. If I did this, but do you think that will make a difference? Kind of questions. All right. What issues will you address? The research that shows this is significant, why the community should care about it. In the Impact Star program, we actually, in the manual, reference the Service Learning Planning Guide, which is another resource for members that are working on service learning projects. So it's another layer of support to help them understand, what is a service learning project and how is it really different than a community service contribution. So using both alongside, if you follow the prompts, you'll get there in the report forms. But if you need support to understand more, you've never done a service learning or help members learn a service learning project or implement one, then using the Service Learning Planning Guide will help a lot. And we will do more trainings on service learning and the impact stars as we start to have members that are working on this. We don't have any yet, but they're getting there. All right. In the impact stars, they need to have a mentor who should have the same or a similar spark to them that can really contribute to providing feedback to them. It's not someone who's necessarily meeting with them regularly. It's someone who's reading their report and giving feedback and making recommendations on the report. They need to be a 4-H adult volunteer, but it may be somebody who becomes a 4-H adult volunteer just to be this mentor. It could be a high school teacher that, you know, has the same spark that they've identified and asked them to be their mentor, but then they need to become a 4-H adult volunteer to do that. All right, so, and then the members reply. So the mentors give comments, the members response, and this is a pattern throughout the whole program. So they create an action plan and timelines. You can see in this example, there's 3 people on this team, Ashley, John, and James. And so they've really divided up the tasks. So we would expect to see the exact same task and timeline in each one of their reports and just saying who's doing what and identifying that. So this should look the same from member to member because they're working on it together as a team. Perfectly fine. And then the mentor comments, and then the member response to their plan. And then they're going to teach their community. That's part of service learning, is teaching your community about your, it's not only implementing your service learning project, but then it's teaching your community about what you did. So they have to communicate 3 different ways, and this can be any way. And right now we have, I don't know, 5 or 6 choices, but they can add or edit their options. Like if let's say they do a blog post, that's not in here. They could add a blog, like they did a blog post. But a presentation, a newsletter article, media, social media post, a poster, a flyer, some kind of report, a video, an interview, it can be anything. But they have to do it 3 different ways. So they just document that real quick, what they did 3 different ways, what they learned. And then we get to showcase their work again. And this is just a reflection of their experience related to their service learning activity. And you can say this is the example we gave is a scrapbook page. So it doesn't have to be complicated, right? It can be written, it can be a scrapbook page, it can be a graphic, it can be a slide deck, it can be a video, it can be anything. If they do pictures, have to have captions, same kind of thing. This is an example. And then they do some reflection, of course, on some prompts about how their project went, how they made a difference. The mentor gives some feedback. The members respond to the mentor. Then finally, everybody signs off. The club leader basically is the final signature always. It basically says, yes, you've completed this level and I will order your award, or put it in the mix of things get ordered at whatever time the club orders them. That's Impact Stars. Okay. I've shown you all the forms and the website. So now let's go back to this and we'll finish up with mechanics. So how is this working as a soft launch? We're doing training. We did September, October. We did this month. I think this might be the last one I do this month because there's no one signed up for Saturday. And then we're getting into holiday time. And then we'll pick it back up in February and March. And as I said, we might focus a little bit of time as well on record books, starting in the spring when people are starting to more think about record books. And I might do those as a Q&A and not just a formal presentation. We're providing coaching and support through those 2 Facebook groups that I talked about. One link was sent to you in the email, and the other one is called California 4-H Record Book Support Group. So if you just search in Facebook for that, you'll find that group. Both groups are private. You have to be a 4-H member to you have to answer the questions and you have to indicate that you are in 4-H in some way. I don't let people into that group that aren't. And I've only had one instance where somebody got into the group that didn't belong in the group, and I immediately blocked them and kicked them out. So no, there's no selling that happens in there. None of the weird things on Facebook that happen, can happen in the groups. I don't let that happen. We do provide evaluation rubrics for club and county evaluation. We did that last year. They're already created because we did have members in pilot groups for all these programs that were working on it. So we did see some books in select counties. It may not have been you, it may have been you, but you will see that. We provide support that way. All the forms and manuals are available on that Google Drive. I've sent you the links, and that you get to them also from the website. I think the website ones are now also in Box, so there's multiple storage places for them. Let's see. Spark achievements earned as junior or higher progress to Emerald Star or Emerald Star 1 right now. And we already talked about where the forms are located. And then I think we talked about most everything on here already. The one thing I didn't mention was that the current Emerald Star, that Legacy Emerald Star program, will sunset on June 30th, 2024. So if you know of members that you're helping work through the Emerald Star, your county Emerald Star project right now, just know that they need to be done with that project by June 30th of 2024, because it will sunset that program. And just the new Emerald Star 1 and 2 will continue. We already talked about the limited edition awards for all those already having bronze, silver, gold, platinum, who are now want to earn new ones in the new achievement program. We already talked about bullet number 3, new members, regardless of their age, start with Spark achievements, but older members may achieve all 4 levels, but if they're a senior, they only need to do 1 level. All that's more spelled out in the manual, so just be sure and follow that closely, especially have senior members, because they don't have to do all of them. Intermediate and senior members who've already earned a bronze star and want to start the new achievements, start with Emerald Star 1. Everyone, even if they're a senior member, they can't start with Impact Stars until they do Emerald Star 1 and 2. So right now, because we're in this transition period, our intermediate and senior members who want to work on new achievements are all kind of in that same place where they're working on Emerald Star 1 and 2. The difference is your senior members can do Emerald Star 1 and 2 quickly and just work through it in 1 year or less, and then start their Impact Stars. Your intermediate members who are starting Emerald Star 1 and 2 can take their time, especially if they're 11, right? They have 3 years to work on 1 and 2 if they're 11 years old. If they're 13 and they want to get ready to start their Impact Star as a 14-year-old senior, then they can do Emerald Star 1 and 2 in the same year. Perfectly fine to do that. Depends on what age they are, how quickly you want to encourage them to move along. If they're younger, take their time. If they're 13, they can move more quickly if they want to. Okay. Any other questions? I'm going to go ahead and stop this. And there's hang on, I'm going to let you unmute yourselves if you want to, because you can just ask your question out loud. There's so few of us here. All right, you should be able to unmute if you want to just ask the question out loud. Yeah. Or if you have any other questions, I don't see any or hear any.
I don't have any questions. Just want to say thank you for leading this.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for joining me tonight. Okay, hearing no questions. And if you do have questions, once again, you can ask them in the Facebook group or send me an email. You have my email now. And otherwise, I'll let you go for the evening. Thanks for joining me. And I hope you have good success working with the program.